Okay, so now we're going to talk about, we mentioned what an adaptation is and the principle of natural selection. So now we're going to talk about how species change over time and why do some species survive better than others. So we're going to go into specifically how can they change. Okay, so our learning target for this set of notes is learning target 18. You're going to be able to justify why a given organism with specific traits will or will not survive to have offspring in a given environment. So you will be able to analyze, given a certain environment, whether or not certain organisms will survive based on their adaptations. Okay, so let's talk about what evolution means. Evolution is simply a change in a species' characteristics over time. So every living thing has changed over time based on the different types of adaptations that they have. Okay, if a species does not change or does not have the necessary adaptations, they will not survive to pass on their traits and they'll cease to exist. That's what happens when species become extinct. Now, there can be certain situations where, like the dinosaurs, there was an asteroid impact and that caused a huge environmental change, and the dinosaurs didn't have the adaptations necessary to survive on smaller plant life. That's why there was a rise of small mammals after that big asteroid impact 65 million years ago. And a lot of the small mammals that we see on Earth today had those adaptations to survive, and they evolved from that asteroid impact. Dinosaurs were too big. The plant life that they needed to be a lot bigger, and when the asteroid impact occurred, it blocked the sunlight, and so those larger plants didn't have enough energy to photosynthesize, so they started to die and only small plants survived. Okay, so that's kind of what extinction is. If species don't have the necessary adaptations to survive, then they could possibly become extinct. Okay. So this picture just shows you kind of how adaptations can be passed on. So you've got two different types of beetles. You've got beetles that are green and brown. Okay, if you notice, the green beetles have these represent two things that they get, one from each parent. That's why it's divided in half. So you get half of your genes from one parent, half from the other. If you notice, the brown is a mixture of green and brown. If they're paired up, green and brown, the brown shows up. So you can look and see how their offspring will pass, what will happen. You could get one green from, you're always going to get a green from this beetle. So if you notice, all the offsprings have at least one green. We call that allele. And when we take genetics, 8th grade, you'll understand a little better. The brown can either give a green or a brown. So if you notice, this one got the brown, this one got the brown, this one got the brown, this one got the green, so he turned green. Now if you notice, because the green does not show up when paired with the brown, most of the offspring are going to be brown instead of green. Okay, if you have a mixture between the brown and the green beetle. If you get two green beetles that mate, then you're going to get all green offsprings. If you get two brown that mate, you're going to get majority brown and then maybe one green. So that kind of just lets you know how things are inherited. So this is how our traits are inherited. And like I said, we will take genetics in 8th grade, and that will explain a little bit more about this, but this is just kind of the introduction. Okay, some things that can stop evolution or cause some problems is geographic isolation. So mountains, lakes, they can isolate a small number of individuals from the rest of the population. And then over several generations, those variations in small groups can create a new species. For example, okay, we've got two types of owls. We've got the northern spotted owl and the Mexican spotted owl. They started out coming from the same species, which we just call the spotted owl. But if you notice right here, this is a desert area. And what happened is these two species, or the spotted owl species, got separated by a desert. So the northern spotted owl evolved into a separate species because they had different variations than the Mexican spotted owl. So this area right here is Nevada, where that desert was a landform that separated the spotted owls, and they eventually evolved into a separate species. Another example of geographic isolation is basically like a hurricane. This is a little article about how a hurricane caused this iguana, it moved the iguana away from where it was, and so it landed on an island, and it started to evolve into a separate species of iguanas because it could only mate with those iguanas that made it to the island. So natural disasters can cause species to kind of separate into different species. And this article will be on my website if you would like to read it. So geographic isolation is something that can happen that will cause species to change a bit. If you look at the armadillo, remember in our geological time, or when we did that, we mentioned Pangaea. That's where all the land masses that we see today came together. They were together as one super landmass that we call Pangaea. Well, over time, the big Pangaea landmass started to separate. So what happened is you had one species of armadillos on that landmass. They started to, because the plates started to separate, they got separated from their original species. So they evolved based on their environment. So those species that had the necessary adaptations to survive in their environment passed on those traits, and they evolved into a separate different species. And if you look, we've got 4 different species of armadillos and anteaters. They're kind of very similar, and they all evolved from one species. Okay, so when we talk about evolution, we also need to talk about how fast that can occur. There's two ideas on the speed of evolution: gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. Gradualism is a slow, ongoing process by which one species changes into a new species. So gradualism says that the process of changing over time is going to take a really long time. Punctuated equilibrium says it could happen fast when a mutation of a few genes results in a new species over a short period of time. So let me give you an example. Okay, so I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller so we can see it on the screen. Oh, see if I can do that. Maybe not. Okay, so the first one is a gradualism model. So you take a butterfly, okay, right here, and over time, as it mates with its own species, remember those species have different variations. If you look here, this individual species had yellow and red colorings in their wings. Okay, over time, as they started to mate, some of those butterflies became more yellow, some of them became more red. Okay, and over time, that eventually separated off into 2 different species, more of the red, more of the brown and yellow. And so that took over a long period of time. Punctuated equilibrium is over here. This says it can happen extremely fast. So you start off with the same butterfly. Maybe these are, yeah, butterfly, and these have the red and the yellow and the brown. And they punctuated equilibrium, this says over time, or very quickly, this evolved right into the red and the brown butterfly, basically because what this butterfly, when it mated with another one, only passed on a brown color to its offspring and passed down only a red to another offspring. So it actually split into 2 different species. So that's the punctuated, where it can happen fast. It really just depends whether it's gradualism or punctuated, depends on how quickly the genetic genes are passed down from a parent to offspring. Okay, so that ends our Target 18, talking about the different ways that organisms can change over time.